you doing? Doing the best you can.
Welcome, all you citizens of the world. It's Michael James, another edition of the Live from the Heartland. This one is for the week of August 20th, and if you're still counting, it's number 115 during the time of the pandemic when we do it via Zoom and not in the beautiful WLUW studios downtown Chicago. We'll see if we ever get back, but we like doing Zoom because people can be all over the world and we get to talk to them. We're recording this on the 19th. It will be broadcast on Saturday morning and other times and other ways to get it, but get it on air or streamed at WLUW.org, and let's go forward. It's been a big week. There's been a lot of activity. The follow-up to the big government raid on Mar-a-Lago. What really is significant, I think, is the passing of the Deficit Reduction Act. It'll bring us a lot of changes in the fight against climate change, as well as healthcare. And just one little thing for all you aging comrades out there, you'll be able to get hearing aids soon without a prescription. So hopefully you don't need them too soon, but if you do, things are going a little bit better on the government front. There were some elections and things we'll get to in a minute, but it was also a big week for me. And I'm going to share a little bit of what I did. I actually recorded this show that for this past week with a couple of people from downstate Illinois and our friend Bob Lawson. I did some of that recording out in El Paso. That's where I headed last Thursday. And I'm going to give you a little report on my travels, which I think will include in memoriam, sports, politics, the environment, etc. So here's a few observations and things that I did. I flew in on Thursday, the 11th. My friend Steve Yellen, who some of you have seen talking about basketball in the barrio on this show, he picked me up. And we ended up going to a Walmart because he needed a cash station to get some money for a friend in Juarez. So we went to the Walmarts where 25 people were killed in August of 2019 by a lone shooter who targeted Mexicans. At the Walmarts, we happened to go into a McDonald's, I confess, but it was not my choice. But we both had Beto shirts on, and people really ate it up. We took our pictures and with employees there, customers there. Beto has a lot of support. I met a guy later in the week who puts out a online paper called El Paso Matters, a fellow named Robert Moore. And he said, don't worry too much about the polls, which show Beto a few points behind, but closing the gap. He's out there hitting every county, and things are looking good. We don't know. This is Texas we're talking about, so we'll see. But after we left the Walmart and paid our respects, there's a small monument there. We crossed over into Mexico, into the state of Chihuahua, to the city of Ciudad Juarez. And going over the bridge, we ended up talking to some kids who were coming back from a day at school in El Paso, going back to Juarez where they live. We got to see people in the street. Every corner has somebody, either, native people juggling with a baby in their arms. One young fellow raising money for a dance contest. But people are. It's rough. It's rough on that side of the border, as it is a lot of places in the world. And people were doing their thing, trying to make a buck. We started hearing a lot of sirens, and those of you who've been paying attention to the news, I don't know if it was the same sirens, but it was the same time. There was a gang fight in a prison, and that spilled over into the streets of Juarez. 11 people were killed. A bunch of businesses were torched, set on fire. Pretty heavy. On Saturday, the reason I had gone to El Paso was for the memorial, kind of a New Orleans style march through the streets with a band for the poet bard Bobby Bird, who we've talked about on the show a number of times. and you can find his name and some interviews we did with him over the years. But it was really a wonderful event, maybe 400 people, 500 people at sunset with a super moon rising. A lot of notable poets and authors were there. A lot of family. There were people I know from basketball in the barrio. I did get to talk politics with this Robert Moore fellow who I mentioned. The next day, we visited New Mexico, just right next to El Paso in Sunland Park. And I did check out the weed stores. One of the people with us was interested in getting involved in the business of it. And so we looked at 3 stores, all of which I think were very different than the one I've been in here in Chicago. A little bit more welcoming, and you get to see the product, smell it, etc. So that is the weed report. On the music front, on Sunday, we drove up to Mesilla, where we went to the Spotted Dog, I think it was called, and our friend Russ Bradford. A lot of Chicagoans know him. He's an author. He coached. He played at North Park. He coached under Haskins at UTEP and Henson at New Mexico State. He is the author of the wonderful book, Sean Harrington's story, All the Dreams We've Dreamed, about violence and basketball on the West Side. After seeing Russ, we headed back down to the baseball stadium in El Paso and we saw the Chihuahuas versus the Space Cowboys. The Space Cowboys are out of Houston and are attached to the Astros, while the Chihuahuas are attached to San Diego. And it's really a beautiful park and a lot of interesting activity going on. One of the things that really caught my attention, though, was water. We visited a friend who was filling a swimming pool, and later that day, there were all these reports about the Colorado River, which is not the source of water for El Paso or Juarez, but definitely nearby states, and how that water allotment will be restricted to each state. And then 2 days later, when I got home, we started hearing reports about the Rio Grande also being real short of water. So the short and the long of it is we're going to have to change a lot of our lifestyles and how we deal with things, because this is a challenge. It is not going to get better unless we are monumental in our work to change the situation. Okay, that's it for my little travel report. And let's move on. On the health front, 1.8 million more doses of monkeypox vaccine were shipped out by the Biden administration. Shots are becoming more readily available for those at risk. You may not know that for watching the Chicago news last night. Cook County COVID cases continue to drop, but could spike again now that school will be back in session beginning, I believe, this Monday. On the voting front, a lot of attention has gone to Liz Cheney losing in Wyoming. It's really ironic to me that 50 years before the 17th Amendment that guaranteed women the right to vote, Wyoming was the first state that allowed women full voting rights. You wouldn't know it from their behavior these days. It is a state that has roughly 580,000 inhabitants. It holds the rank of 50th in population in the country. And while Cheney lost, she's talking about running for president and basically moving to make sure Donald Trump doesn't ever come back into office. So we respect her on that front. We'll see how that all plays out. Up in Alaska, moderate Republican Lisa Murkowski advances to, they have a ranked voting system. So she finished first in the Senate race, and she will be running in November. Also they have one congressional representative out of Alaska, and a Native woman, a Democrat, won first place in that ranked voting. And she will take on 4 others, including the former vice presidential candidate, Palin. And we're rooting for the Native American Democratic woman. I've been getting a lot of stuff in the mail on that. I'm talking emails from right-wing groups. Now, I don't know, because I hooked into one conservative thing to check it out, but I've been getting something from a Catholic Vote, called Loop, and it's pretty critical of Biden. I think it's a conservative site, but they did report that Planned Parenthood has spent $50 million on midterm elections. I think that's wonderful. If they're going to have the money and they're going to spend it, that seems like a good cause. On the international front, Lula da Silva, who former president of Progressive out of Brazil, has announced officially that he's running for president against the right-wing Bolsonaro, a kind of a Trump-like guy. Lula is very much favored, but there are reports of concern over the role of the military if and when Lula defeats Bolsonaro and refuses to leave office. That's from Democracy Now! We will be staying abreast of what's going on in Brazil because we have our own friend reporter down there, Brian Meir. He's been on the show before. He lives there, and we're looking forward to hearing from him really up front. More on the global front, what do we got here? A little history. 1 year ago, yesterday, since the Afghanistan withdrawal, women still face persecution under I have here Wahhabist law. I'm not sure if I got that correctly. They seek equality and civil rights. We'll be following that, as will many people around the world, because it's playing a role in all of our activity. On the global front, a little bit more. China, the US, and Europe are all getting hit with massive heat wave. Temperatures in China are up around 109, same as California and El Paso, I think. Alps are seeing off the charts snow melting, and Europe drought is getting worse. Here in Chicago, it is the weekend of the Air and Water Show. And whether or not you think that's a worthy way to spend our tax dollars, I was in that neighborhood yesterday. I'm talking Thursday, as we were recording this on Friday for a Saturday broadcast. On Thursday, I was down there by the miniature golf at the Diversey Harbor, and I got to see all these Blue Angel planes whipping around, making a lot of noise. Pretty impressive. And close to home here in Rogers Park, this is the weekend of the the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest. A lot of great music all weekend long. A lot of people out selling their wares, their goods. When the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest first began, they used to encourage the local artists to set up in front of their studios. And I had used to participate in the Art Fest, and then an injury kept me away. And I began to do it on my front porch. And I will be doing that on Sunday, most Sundays when the weather is good, at the Prairie Dancer Studio Gallery or my front porch gallery. But I encourage you all to come up to Rogers Park, or come down to Rogers Park or east to Rogers Park, and check out some of the music, because our former engineer, James Porter, who used to do the Hoodoo Party on WLUW, he has a new band called the James Dean Joint, and I think it's Sunday he's going to be performing. Fareed Haq, there's a lot of really good people playing. Funky Daisy, I believe, a whole list of people. We're going to take a short musical break. I think today we're going to use music from Warren Leming, who will be a guest later in the show. He was a longtime member of a band back in the late 60s, Wilderness Road. He's gone on to do all kind of other activities, but we're going to play his music today, and we'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. We're going to bring on our first guest, who will be the one, the only, our sometimes co-host, our sometimes co-producer, Thom Clarke. And we're going to talk about all things that matter as viewed from Thom Clarke. Okay, see you in a minute. Thanks. Okay, welcome back to more Live from the Heartland for the week of August 20th. And I'm Michael James, and it always gives me a lot of pleasure to bring on our next guest. He used to be a regular host on the show. He is still a fill-in host when we're in desperate need. He is also a co-producer of the show, and he's a guy that I look to for a lot of insights and understanding, and explains to me around a number of issues. The one, the only, Rogers Park's own Thom Clarke. Good morning to you, Thom.
Morning, Michael, and to your vast audience in Rogers Park and beyond.
It is growing, and it's not only in Rogers Park, but it is beyond. And the last thing I talked about in the opening banter, so to speak, was the Rogers Park's notable Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest.
You know, people aren't too worn out from Friday night's opening. Saturday at noon, the Rogers Park Community Chorus is performing. It includes my lovely wife, Jean.
Oh.
They operate out of the Rhythm Arts Center, which is closing. So this is kind of a bittersweet performance led by Charles Davis, who's a rather renowned Southside gospel choir director who comes up here every week and works with about 12, 15, 20 Rogers Park residents who test out their voices. And so that's noon on Saturday, and not quite closing up, but almost. Our friends Funkadaisy are there at 6 p.m. on Sunday evening. It's a busy weekend. Hope for good weather in between the showers, and have lots of good food and music and art. You're going to have some displays, right, Michael?
Well, I'm over on my front porch gallery.
Right in the edge of the...
On Sunday, it's okay. It's on most Sundays when it's warm and sunny. They used to have the artists open up their studios in the early days of the Glenwood Avenue Art Fest. I don't know how many studios are left, but I call my front porch gallery, and I'll be around, and I am going to go traipse around on Saturday and then Sunday too. It's really a wonderful event, the Rogers Park, the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest. There's another thing happening in Rogers Park, or happened at a centennial you just told me about, Thom. What's that about?
Well, I took a picture of the Sentinel of Leon Beach, and that is one of these life safety rings, which on a gorgeous weekday morning in the last week, and this gorgeous blue sky with clouds speckling around, there is this sentinel who's there 24 hours. And since our alderwoman and other community residents organized to get these things installed, there have been at least 2 lives saved along the lakefront, as I understand. You know, over in South Haven, they've lost 4 lives just in the last month from people in riffraff. So I wish we could keep the lifeguards going longer. It's been gorgeous on the lakefront, our lovely lakefront, all this week in this milder August weather. It's been really, really something else. But that sentinel picture of the lifeguard ring, the solitary safety ring, is, I think, a pretty stunning commentary on community action paying off.
No, that was a good one. And make sure you send that to Emilio so that we can have that on the video version of this, which is on youtube.com/heartlandmedia/videos. Those of you who listen to the radio show, enjoy it. I know, and it's on 3 times a week, Saturday, Tuesday, and Friday at 9. But it's also anytime you want it at youtube.com/heartlandmedia. And let's close to home still. We are, we're broadcast on WLUW Loyola Station. We love Loyola University. That doesn't mean it's like we like Democrats. Doesn't mean we like everything they do. What's going on with Loyola? I think there's some land grab in the works.
Well, some people are accusing the university of that, and that's nothing new. They've picked up a lot of land around the Lakeshore campus over the last couple of decades.
They have.
We're looking at the future of St. Ignatius Church, which has been closed, combined. It's still a little uncertain what's happening with what also used to be the Waldorf School site. They built their own building a little bit to the south. So we have a vacant school building and a vacant historic church, as some see it. And the future of both are up in the air, as both Loyola looks to the school for maybe dorms, and a local group is trying to preserve the building for a community center. Um, what happens is always murky because Loyola often discloses late in the game what their plans might be, but it's very clear from Sheridan Road west to Glenwood. Um,
Nothing's safe.
there seem to be more empty lots than housing actually being done, and the housing that's being built is not particularly affordable. So I think there's some legitimate concern. The alderwoman had a hearing recently. We'll see what develops over the next few months as Loyola perhaps discloses its plans for what will happen with the St. Ignatius site.
Who visited the neighborhood recently, Thom?
Well, we had the famous St. Jerome's Kermes Festival all 3 nights last weekend. Lots of great music and local food. It's a great festival, great turnout. And lo and behold, as we were talking with Alderman Maria Haddon, she was stopping by and getting greetings from her constituents. Who walks up? But Cardinal Supich, who decided to pay a visit to a very vibrant Latino Catholic community celebrating their Summerfest. And it was quite a surprise for me, but a good encounter to get in a few questions about the present and future of the diocese and our own parish, St. Nicholas up in Evanston, which is a very busy place. So it was neat to have someone from downtown visiting the neighborhood on a balmy summer evening.
On that note, last week before I flew off to El Paso, I noticed that the track that has been built at the field school was getting filled up with tents and all kind of stuff. And it was a back to school thing. And at some point I said, I better go over there. And there was the mayor shaking hands, Lori Lightfoot and everything. And I saw her look right at my Beto shirt I had on. We kind of smiled, and I got some good pictures, I think. We'll see.
Did you get her crossing the ball to dump State Senator Cassidy? She was in the dunk booth.
Oh, I didn't see that.
A great video online with the mayor dunking Lori. It took dunking Kelly. Took her a few tries, but she finally got her in the drink.
For people who don't know, this show used to be broadcast every Saturday from the stage at the late great Heartland Cafe, and that spot is a block from where we're doing this Zoom. A couple blocks from where Thom is. And Thom, you mentioned that site. What do you observe? What's happening?
Well, after a pretty slow takeoff, I understand there were zoning and permit and other issues, and then the pandemic, and then of course we get into summer and there's a cement strike. But there are walls slowly going up, and I'll just note how kind of bare and barren these cement walls with no sunlight penetrating that we see going up on this former warm community setting. We'll see what develops. I hope folks who get the housing down the line enjoy being that close to the L. They're going to pay a dear penny for it. We couldn't get any affordable housing based on the current zoning, but we will next time. We did have a significant victory after several community hearings. There is going to be a new, much needed, I think, men's shelter set up near the Toohey Park encampment that's been going on for a year and a half or two now. This is something the Park District has sort of allowed around the city as the pandemic made housing for the homeless more and more difficult. Whether or not we're moving away from the pandemic, we seem to be moving on from it. And one local solution as we go into winter, when we see far more signs of homelessness, not only in our neighborhood, but around the city, is to open up a new shelter in what's been a vacant building on Clark Street, just south of Howard. I think it's actually a great new resource that's clearly much needed. The program that's running this shelter has a lot of experience, and this should be a great opportunity to help 60, 70, 80 people a year get back on their feet.
No, it's a good thing. And I know Maria Haddon has worked really hard on it. There's been some opposition from the builders group, et cetera. But I think the community is basically standing strong behind her decision to go forward. Let me fire a few other things at you while I got you for a few more minutes, Thom. And will you come back in another month, if not before?
I want to get a quick farm report before we sign off too.
Well, let's do the farm report then, and then I want to shift over to Uptown maybe and some possible challenges to our mayor, maybe what's going on in the journalistic world in Chicago. Tell us what you were going to tell us.
Well, I just, on a more personal note, we have two new ducklings that we hatched in our own very backyard off our current flock of five lane ducks and one drake, who we think keeps them all happy. I know he is. So one of our ducks coming out of spring began to brood, and then a second one did. And to make a long story short, about 6 weeks ago, we let one of them roost on 4 fertilized eggs, 2 of which eventually hatched. And we now have month-old ducklings that are of a pretty incredible size already. They're kind of making it their own in this sea of adults who pretty much are tolerating them. It's a real interesting pecking order thing. It's a little bit different with ducks, but they're healthy.
Send a picture so we can include that for the people who watch this show.
And I'll just note that after being very concerned that we weren't seeing any, we are beginning to see a few monarchs in the yard. We have lots of weed. It's not as prolific as it's been in past years, but they are flying around. They love the garden. My wife has set up in the backyard. It's doing its job and attracting these not just monarchs, but a variety of other butterflies that, quite frankly, we haven't seen much of this summer.
Yeah, a lot of talk about butterflies these days, a lot on the news, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, they made it on an endangered species list, which is appropriate given their critical role in our ecosystem.
I've actually seen a number of them, a couple of them around here and other places I've been. So it's a good sign. We both worked in Uptown at different times, but we both have a lot of love for that community. We know its strengths, its hardships, etc. Any report from Uptown? I think somebody passed that you know, and there is an open aldermanic spot coming up, and so there's some activity on that front.
Well, there's going to be a Donnybrook for the aldermanic seat, and I don't think we have time to even begin to get into that.
We're saving that.
It's a replay, by and large, of the candidates who ran against James Kappelman last time, except he's not running this time. I remember fondly the interview with Angela Clay, and I'll mention her in particular because she comes out of the Uptown Intercommunal Survival Committee tradition and variations saying Helen Schiller is coming out with a book that's being heavily promoted and being very well received.
Helen's on the show next week.
Well, I just wanted to get a little quick promo on that. But indeed, I want to note, because of a very moving memorial service at St. Gertrude's this past week, that really did bring together several different Uptown networks and beyond, really an international network centered and growing out of Uptown in the 70s and 80s. Thomas Bissine passed away after battling a couple months of injury after breaking his neck at home. And he was married to Rita Simo, more famously known as the founder of the People's Music School. And Rita, who died a couple of years ago and her body was donated to science, we were able to finally send them both off to their maker in a very wonderful, if overly long, service at St. Gertrude's, about 2.5 hours, but a great gathering of Uptown organizers and political activists and religious leaders and folks who've done work in Central America and beyond. Joe Mulligan, who we had on the show a couple of years ago talking about the Chicago 15. He's a missionary in Nicaragua the last 35 years. He's up here to celebrate Rita and Tomas. They were quiet giants in our community, very different personalities. Rita being very outgoing and was bound and determined to get this music school that provides free classical music training to everyone despite their income. And Tomas, the quiet behind the scenes supporter, he actually ran the People's the Spanish-speaking bookstore for many years. It was the only place in the country to get liberation theology textbooks and theology books in Spanish, which he would go to Spain and other places and bring home cases of books and sell them out of a storefront on Broadway near the People's Law Office. So great celebration of former Uptown era and Uptown heroes. I salute Tomas Bissine and Rita Simo.
Oh, that's nice, Tom. And let me ask you, you got any journalism news? I know you keep abreast of what's going on in the Fifth Estate world. What do we got?
Well, believe it or not, one of the biggest pieces of news is that the Tribune dropped Tom Skilling as their weather person. For those who still get the paper Tribune, the few of us that are left, the whole back page of the first section traditionally has been this wonderful weather section. In fact, I remember its roots back to the Farm Report, going back many years ago when Orion Samuelson was getting his start. Anyway, they've switched to AccuWeather and Channel 7. I guess they got a cheaper deal. It's the story of the Tribune, the hollowed out Tribune these days. It really is a sorry shadow of its former self as the fund managers squeeze out every last dime, not particularly concerned about local journalism. It's a really sad state of affairs. Go Sun Times. Go Block Club News. Go read.
Yeah. Well, Tom, this has been great. The last time you were on, we had planned this kind of potpourri of your insights and observations, but our good friend Hank DeZutter had just passed away, so we devoted that to him. But this is exactly what I hope I can get you to do on a regular basis: is come on a regular basis, and share your insights and observations and opinions and your compassion. So thank you once again, and I'll see you. I imagine I'll see you in the neighborhood the next couple of days.
Very good. Take care.
All right.
Mike.
You are listening or watching the Live from the Heartland show, and some of the news is stuff that will have already happened when you listen or watch. But if you're the lucky group, you will be listening to it live on Saturday morning, not live, but the first time it's aired. We're going to play a little more music, probably from Warren Leming, either his Civil War songs or from Wilderness Road. That'll be up to our wonderful engineer, Emilio Davis. And we'll be right back with our next guest for the week of August 20th on the Live from the Heartland show.
When I come out of Knoxville in 61, I'm marching with my old shotgun. Slept out on the road most every night, in a rich man's war and a poor man's fight. Dry corn by day and water at night. And it's up now, Johnny, and run for your life. Of all them boys volunteered with me, I'm all that's left of the 3rd Tennessee. Well, Jeff Davis, he lives mighty fine. Kisses the girls and drinks French wine. Sleeps at home most every night. A rich man's war and a poor man's fight.
Okay, we're back. We're back with more Live from the Heartland for the week of August 20th. Available either on youtube.com/Heartland Media, on Spotify and Google Podcasts, on Can TV, and of course on Saturday, Tuesday, and Friday, 9 a.m. streamed and on air at WLUW.org or 88.7 FM. And right now, we're going to bring a guy who I first met on a very sort of a rough edge day for me. It was back in January of probably 1969 or so. I was at Alice's restaurant. I was with Rising Up Angry, the organization I helped to co-found, a newspaper that led to that organization. And we were doing our first benefit at Alice's Revisited on Wrightwood. And the band that we got was Wilderness Road with our next guest, Warren Leming. And I'll never forget him, because that was the same day that someone we had been working with was out of their gourd on pills or whatever, kind of spitting in my face. I pushed this guy. I turned around, I said, get him out of here before the police come. And he flew through the air with a sucker punch and broke my jaw. So that's my memory of my first day I met you, Warren. And I'm so glad that all these years later, we're still talking to each other and you're still making good music. How are you doing?
Well, no, we've been doing good, and I'm working on a book of anti-Trump era poetry, actually, to be called Cantos for Ayn Rand or Agit Spam. That's going to be a book of around 150, 200 poems that I have done in various venues, and it's all virulently anti-Trump, anti-reactionary, anti-DeSantis, you name it.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have one handy that's not too long?
I wish I did have.
We'll do that another time.
Maybe I can dig one up here.
That's your invitation to come back. Let me, what I'd like to do over the course of the next 20 minutes or so is to kind of do a retrospective of you and your life. So rather than looking up the poem now, how about telling us a little bit about where you come from and how you got on the scene with Wilderness Road?
Okay, I'm a suburban kid. I was born in Forest Park, Illinois, years ago, and I came out of Forest Park and had a bluegrass band in the early '60s called the Urban Renewal Boys. We were famed for our slum clearance breakdown, and the Urban Renewal Boys were me, a guy by the name of Ray Tate,
Oh, yeah.
and some other folks, Phil Coolmanen, Jerry Sullivan, God rest his soul, and I played banjo. And we played at a place called, it was famed because Dick Gregory was one of the people who had broke from there.
Say that again. Where's the place you played? Because it blocked out.
It was on State Street. It was called the Fickle Pickle Coffee House.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a great place, and we hung out there and did a lot of naughty things.
So
and then from there I went. Yeah, pardon?
Wilderness Road. How did that come on the scene?
Well, that came out a little later because I had gotten drafted. I did 2 years in the Signal Corps in the Army, and that was of interest because I got to Germany and picked up some language skills. It was a great time. When I got back to Chicago, I wanted to do a band, and Nate Herman and I had met, and we put together Wilderness Road because we had a relationship at that time with something called the Second City Touring Company, which was at Second City, and they did their college dates, and we both had a hand in that. And then out of that came the band, and then we hooked up with people like you and Abe Peck and Elliot Wald at the Seed, and all the wonderful stuff that was going on in the '60s that spelled resistance.
Well, you guys hit it pretty big there, Wilderness Road. It was on Columbia Records. I don't know if they still put out records.
Yeah, we did a thing for Columbia, and then we shifted when Columbia lost interest in us because we were doing weird stuff. We actually did satirical stuff and whatnot, and the record companies they had sort of a vague handle on music, but if you did anything that was in any way literary or required intelligence, like satire, they were a little bit befuddled. And this happened with a bunch of Warner Brothers. We did a thing with Warner Brothers. And then from there, Nate Herman and I did a program for National Public Radio called Lemmings, or what was it? All Things Considered. And we did satire for them for a year or so. And we did some video for Image Union, if you remember Image Union. Tom Weinberg had that at Channel 11. They did a lot of independent video and whatnot. And then I did a lot of writing for the theater. I worked with a guy named Paul Sills, who started something that I was a part of called Story Theater. And Story Theater had a good run in Chicago. And we turned over our headquarters to the Yippies, who had come into town in '68, because we played a part in '68 in terms of the anti-reactionary activity.
You just one more thing on Wilderness Road. It was you and the Haven brothers and Nate Herman. And Nate, I think, went on to be a writer for Saturday Night Live for a while. And but the thing I remember most about Nate is he plays a wonderful part in the Andy Davis film Stony Island, which I appear in as a bad guy, but Nate plays a great part in it. And okay, so let's move along a little bit. So you get into theater. Uh, you mentioned you work with Paul Sills. You also there was a famous guy around town named Del Close. You had some
Yeah.
activity with him too, as I recall.
Yeah, Close and I had an act at a wonderful place called Cross Currents Cabaret, and I wrote three shows for us. And it was Dell and myself, Catherine Rosas, who was a wonderful pianist, opera singer, and a guy named Larry Coven, who had been at Second City at one point. But we had a group called the Post Rational Players. And we did, as I say, I wrote three shows for us and did the music. And we had a great time at Cross Currents. It was a great, great club on Wilton at Belmont, and just a marvelous club. They've since disappeared. And Tom Goodman, who was the guy who was involved with putting Cross Currents together, he and a guy named Kovac had kept that venue going, and it was just a terrific place.
You know, I started getting you to come up to the Heartland to do things, and as I recall, you had a play. Let me get this right. Anton Beer. I'm forgetting the name. It was about Mexico. The old guy who goes to Mexico.
Oh yeah, Ambrose Bierce. Yeah,
Yeah, didn't you do something around that? And your brother-in-law
I
played.
did a play called Ambrose Bierce and American Destiny, which I later got Ed Asner to record, and there's a CD of it. And people who are interested can contact me through the website wildernessroad.net or Cold Chicago at Cold Chicago Co., which is also another website, and I'll send them copies of the Ed Asner doing my Ambrose Bierce show.
Well, that'd be great. So then you, I remember you put out a really wonderful album, and we're going to use some of that music, I believe, today. A
Uh-huh.
rich man's war and a poor man's fight, and
Right.
it's your
Yeah.
interest in the Civil War, and I want to bring that up because a lot of people talk about we're on the edge of another civil war. We certainly have a divided population.
Yeah.
The fascist underbelly has emerged to the forefront. Um, Talk a little
And
bit about.
apropos of your point, if you look at the states, they comprise exactly the old Confederacy. So it's kind of interesting that we're on the verge of yet another one of these Civil Wars businesses.
Tell
Indeed,
us
yeah.
tell us a little bit about putting together that album, A Rich Man's War. That I know you've been on
Yeah,
the
that was
show.
some guys from Old Town School. We got together. Jimmy Tomasello, my wonderful friend, who's now in Europe with his lovely wife Vera in Holland, and a whole bunch of folks. The Martin Rothgaber's boys, Otto and his other son, and Max, and they did some wonderful stuff. Max has turned into a virtuoso banjo player, and I was instrumental in helping that along with his mom because we bought him his first banjo. But a lot of good players on Rich Man's War, Poor Man's Fight, and
Give
if
talk a
people,
little bit about the theme.
yeah, the theme is a phrase from from the American Civil War, and it was referred to as a rich man's war and a poor man's fight. Meaning it was like today. The people in power, who were making the trouble, and the poor folks and the general population had to go off and fight it. So it spoke to me in that sense that
Well, I
these
always like hear you talking about you're a political guy, and I'd like to I kind of I like to look at the world like where are we coming from, where are we at, and where are we going. And I'm going to
right.
throw that out to you to share any where we're coming from, where you think we're at, and maybe your vision, hopes, or concerns about the future. Let's
Well, we
start.
all we all we all hope and pray for a peaceful future. Clearly, we've seen the horrors of two world wars, and a lot of wars in between. Some of them involving this country. In fact, a great many of them involving this country. And we see what a horror war is. And as this weaponry has gotten more sophisticated, we see how the war comes home. When somebody can go out and buy an AK or AR-15, that has a 30 round magazine, you can do a lot of damage, and a lot of damage has been done. To the population. So people are very concerned about it, and we saw with the Trump regime that all of the nightmares that had been spawned by the Cold War, came along and were spawned again by this extraordinary reactionary administration, which, attacked women's rights. They attacked abortion successfully because of the Trump court, which is what I call the current Supreme Court. And Joe Biden, much as I appreciate his efforts, was the man who had something to do with the elevation of Clarence Thomas to the court. So
He certainly did.
that's a sad chapter.
For people who don't remember, it was when Anita Hill was challenging Clarence Thomas. Joe
Right.
Biden didn't do real well at that time. I don't.
No, it was not Joe's finest hour, but Joe, of course, is not Trump, and I am a never Trumper. And in terms of where we're going, we hope that the 2024 elections, will produce a more progressive, positive. Remember, Bernie Sanders ran on a campaign which essentially Franklin D. Roosevelt's campaign for 1945. So we haven't exactly been burning down the signs of or burning through progress here. Is we're still trying to get past some of the things that Franklin D. Roosevelt wanted done in 1945. And I know you come from, as do I, progressive democratic Roosevelt style people. And that legacy is still with us. And, we have a long, hard fight ahead of us. But, we're up to the task. And my hope is that we'll see a progressive democratic agenda in 2024, because we have a lot of stuff we have to stave off.
Well, beyond 2024, we've got this midterm 2022.
Yes.
And here in
Yes.
Illinois, we really have to talk to everyone we know, because we have two Illinois Supreme Court seats coming up, and
Right.
those two, if we were to lose those, we'd be in big trouble. So we really have to.
Yeah, and we just saw the people of the good state of Wyoming, all 908,000 of them or whatever, essentially
578.
disenfranchised Liz Cheney, and I'm not a Liz Cheney fan, but she did do some good work in terms of going after, our first real traitor president, and I mean Donald Trump.
Traitor is a good word. Well, let me ask you in our before we go out, what as an aging progressive and performer, and I'm sort of in there too, but I'm asking you, what do you either look forward to, or what advice do you have, both to the younger comrades coming up as well as the aging comrades that we associate with?
Well, you got to hang in there and keep the faith. And you do that by keeping yourself alive through action, activity. What is to be done is next is always the question. And everybody out there has a certain a skill set. That's what has kept them alive and kept them going. And those skills have to be both, economic in terms of what they provide, but they've also got to be in the service of something I would call progress, American destiny, and keeping the great struggle that has gone on in this country over the centuries from the Civil War on, really, and complicated country. Jefferson and Washington, of course, were slave owners, and that has to be incorporated into and understood as a part of our history. Critical race theory is real important. It's being attacked by people, DeSantis in Florida, and there are a lot of people who are after progress. And please remember, folks, fascism is always an attack on human intelligence. You saw that with Trump. You see that with DeSantis. You saw it with Flynn, you saw it with Stone, you see it with the Mercer family with their billions, which are out there like Murdoch's billions, financing what is essentially fascism, and we got to fight it.
In order to fight it, we have to stay as healthy as we can, and I know that you, like myself, we all have issues as we get older. I know you're doing agricultural work over there on your farm. What are you doing to sort of stay limber and in shape? Are you still playing?
Well, I'm not up on athletics the way that you are. You've kept a real interest going in athletics generally, which I applaud. My father was a good athlete, unlike me. I was a smoker and chased girls, alas. But
Or
in any
you think I didn't do that?
event, I'm a bicyclist. I have a really beautiful Absolute Fuji carbon fiber bike, which I use as often as I can. I recommend biking to everybody.
What are you working on these days? You got a
I'm
new play
working
in
on
the
a book
works,
of
music?
poetry, as I mentioned, and I'm doing a lot of writing. I'm doing some essays for a website about our current political situation, and I'll continue doing that sort of stuff so long as I've got breath.
Warren Leming,
Yeah,
you're a wonderful man.
you are
I've,
too. Thank
I've
you.
been aware of you ever since I had showed up and got my jaw broken at Alice's Revisited.
I'm
Uh,
sorry about the jaw. I apologize about that. And Michael, do not feel like the Lone Ranger. There are many who've lined up with Wilderness Road who, alas, had a similar fate.
Anything I didn't ask you that you want to address?
No, no, just keep up the good work. Keep, keep the flag flying, and we appreciate all of your efforts. You've always been a beacon in the night and an inspiration to a
Well,
lot of others.
that's one reason I think I have this show is because I get people saying nice things about me after many years of
Well,
disparaging remarks.
it's true. You've been at the forefront of something really important, and continue to be. And we salute you. And my love to the beautiful Katie Hogan and all of your gang.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot of people who make this show possible. I'll tell you right now, it's Katie Hogan, Emilio Davis, Thom Clarke, Imani Warren, Lynn Orman. They keep it coming. And we do this every week, and we're so glad. I'm glad you came on. Next week, we're going to have the incomparable former alderman of the 46th Ward, Helen Schiller, with her new book, and a guy that you might know. Michael McGraw, also known as Michael Piranha and the Piranha Brothers, who lives out in Hawaii. And I believe next week is going to be the first monthly edition of a new song by Michael McGraw based on current events.
Great.
So that's a little teaser for next week. I think I hope we don't have too much time left, but we got plenty of music to fill the space. So I'm going to thank you once again, Warren. I want to thank all those people who I mentioned who make this show possible. I do encourage you to tell others to listen to the show either on Saturday, Tuesday, or Friday, 9 to 10 on WLUW or 88.7. And you can always get us at youtube.com/heartland.
All right, and let me put in one just last plug, and that's my Facebook page, which features the poetry on an almost daily basis. Thank you so much, Michael, for all of your efforts in behalf of all of us.
Okay, we're going to continue asking you all to continue to do all the good you can in the world, do good in the world, because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that Warren does, that Emilio does, that Katie does, a whole lot of us out there. We're sticking together. We're going to bring it all on home. All power to the people. See you next week.
It's equal rights for every man, regardless of his strength. So don't let no one fool you. Joshua said,